everyone! Today we are going to work on your listening comprehension and we are going to watch an interview with a Russian model, Irina Shayk. I'm sure you all know her because she's very popular all around the world. Last time we were watching a similar interview with Mila Jovovich, and if you missed it, you can watch it here. And now let's start.
Так, позвольте мне с вами попросить вместе прокомментировать некоторые ваши фотографии.
Давайте.
Смотрите.
Maybe you already noticed that in Russian language we have a lot of international words. And even here Ivan used the word прокомментировать, which, as you can guess, is the English word comment. And here it's like a verb, прокомментировать, that's perfective aspect, and also it can be imperfective, комментировать. But also it can be a noun like комментарий or simply comment. We have really a lot of these words, especially if we're talking about food, IT, business, sport, clothes. So like this, you can hear the words hot dog, джинсы, PR, brand, a lot of them. Under the video, I will send you the link for 120 words, Russian kind of words, that were taken from English. So for you, it'll be really useful because it'll be really easy to remember and to learn those words.
Давайте.
Смотрите, мы обратили внимание, зашли в ваши социальные сети. Не то, чтобы мы в них все время сидим. Ну, зашли. И там обнаружили такую тенденцию. Это мы случайно просто так зашли. Вы смотрите, все время, у вас все время, очень частенько, много животных разных. Скажите, пожалуйста...
Here I want to pay your attention to some Russian collocations. First one is зайти в социальные сети. And second one is сидеть в социальных сетях. Short version of социальные сети, like social network, you can say соцсети, and more often we would say it like this. So here, actually, these two collocations, they are a perfect example of accusative and prepositional cases. First one, зайти в социальные сети. So you kind of go in, you come into social networks. So in this case, that's accusative. And the second one, сидеть в социальных сетях, like to sit, to be there, it's already prepositional because it's your location. And the third word from this part is the word частенько. Частенько, it's a colloquial word, and as you can guess, that's the word часто, often. But here we use this word with this diminutive suffix еник. And a little bit later I will explain this to you because we will have some more examples with these suffixes.
Но я только здесь собаку,
В основном
кстати,
собаки,
вижу.
да. Я сейчас только понял, что это в основном собаки.
Они
Вот.
просто разных пород и цвета.
Они разные породы цвета, да. Скажите, с чем связан выбор цвета собаки и породы? И что это за новый модный аксессуар, о котором мы, живущие здесь, не знаем?
From this part, I want to comment the last sentence, which is really complicated and long. So, и что это за аксессуар, о котором мы, живущие здесь, не знаем? Especially the last part is difficult, о котором мы, живущие здесь, не знаем. My favorite word который, I'm talking about it a lot, and here you have it in prepositional case, о котором. And then we have мы, живущие здесь, не знаем. This живущие is Russian participle. In English, you also have it, the same logic as for you and for us. So you have the verb live and participle living. We have the same жить, живущий. But the only difference is that for us, it's a little bit more complicated to form this participle because it can be past tense, it can be present tense, it can be passive, it can be active, and always it'll be a different suffix. So that's why if you still don't know this topic, you can simply replace this participle with the word который. I don't want to take the same sentence because it'll be котором, two words который, and it'll be too much. But let's take just, for example, the sentence люди, живущие здесь. So you can say, even in English, yes, so this sentence люди, живущие здесь, it's like people living here. You can replace it and you can say people who live here. So you can do the same in Russian. You can say люди, которые живут здесь. You just need to pay attention to the form of the word который, to its gender and to its case. But it's easier than to form the participle from the verb.
Иван, ну это маленькие собачки, это не аксессуар.
Вот это маленькие собачки вы называете?
And here we go. This word собачки. Before, I told you that we'll talk a little bit more about diminutive suffixes. And here we have this example. So собачка, as you can guess, that's the word собака, but with a different suffix. And we use these diminutive suffixes obviously to make the objects, the things, a little bit smaller or cuter. It depends what you want to say. So in this case, even if we're talking about a big dog, you can say собачка, and like this, you will show that you just love her. You just want to make the word and the thing, the dog, cuter for you. And you can basically change every word if you want to make it smaller or cuter. Собачка, котик, сумочка, платьишко. The only problem that we have different suffixes and you never know which one to use to make this cute word. But you can try anyway. And second example how we can use these suffixes is, for example, for adjectives. Like, let's take colors. And for colors, if you don't want to say that it's blue, that it's red, in English you have a perfect example. You use the suffix ish. So you can say bluish. And we do the same using these diminutive suffixes. So you would say instead of голубой, you would say голубенький, or синенький, or красненький. Very often we combine all these words with diminutive suffixes. So even here we can say миленькая собачка, красненькая сумочка, something like this. But you should understand that you don't have to use this too much. Probably only kids will talk like this, yeah, so everything is small, everything is cute for them. So if you are grown up, better not to use these suffixes a lot, or it'll be a little bit weird if you always talk like this.
Но смотрите, вот эта вот первая фотография, это была моя самая первая съемка, да, для русского журнала «Джалюс». Вторая, где я... Что я там делаю? Сплю?
Вы спите вместе с собой.
Сплю. Кто фотографирует, интересно?
Тоже ума не приложу. Кто бы это рядом с вами с таким бы опытом был?
Okay, here a very good expression that we use a lot. Ума не приложу. Я ума не приложу. Another collocation can be я понятия не имею. So both will mean I have no idea. I don't know.
Это собачка моей подруги Инге, да. Это собачка моего знакомого фотографа. А вот эти вот фотографии слева, справа.
Вот эти?
Да, вот эти вот. И вот это бездомные собачки, которые можно их приютить, и чтобы они у вас дома жили. У них дома нету.
Here, another interesting thing, more for colloquial Russian. Вот. Вот это вот, вот эти вот. Before I made the video about 6 ways how to say here and there in Russian. And there I was talking about this word вот. that we use really a lot in different meanings. And here you can see a live example how we do this. And if it's normal to use this word at the beginning of the phrase, when you want to show something or when you want to point to the object, it's okay, yes? So you say вот эта фотография, вот это дом, вот эта собачка, anything. But sometimes it works like a filler word if you use it too much. Like here, for example, instead of saying вот эта фотография, we can say вот это вот фотография. No need to use this second word вот like twice, yeah, вот это вот фотография. You can simply say вот эта фотография and that will be perfect. But obviously a lot in conversational Russian we use these filler words as in any other language. Like sometimes we cannot control this process of using them. So that's why it happens. And you can hear this word вот a lot.
Куда лететь? Адрес говорите, чтобы приютить. Значит, это означает, что вы этих собак берете...
Это, кстати, московские.
Okay, here we have the last word, московские. Moskovsky, as you can guess, that's from the word Moskva. So, in Russian, we don't like keep the same words if we want to say something different. It's not like in English where you can simply say Moscow streets or London streets or Paris streets. Anything, you will keep the name of the city. For us, we don't do this. We always change this name of the city if we want to say it as an adjective. For example, here, as you can see, we cannot say Москва улицы or Москва фотографии. We won't understand what we want to say. That's why we change it and we say kind of an adjective. So, московские улицы or лондонские улицы, парижские улицы, нью-йоркские улицы. Every city you will change, even if it's a foreign city, if it's not Russian.
Это вы в Москве фотографируете?
Да, это сегодня утром.
Это прям сегодня?
Okay, another colloquial thing. The word прям. We already had this word before. It was the word прямо, like right. And you can use it like here, прямо сегодня, прямо сейчас. But when we speak fast, we like shorten the words. So you will say, instead of прямо, you will skip this letter O at the end, and you will say прям. Прям сегодня, прям сейчас. And in one video, I already told you about this word сейчас, that we also like to do shorter, and we say щас. So this expression right now, you can say прям щас. So if you compare it to normal one, прямо сейчас, obviously it's much shorter. Прям щас.
Они приехали из приюта, и вот они такие были...
Вас обнимают, смотрите как.
Да.
Но после этого их забрали, от вас увезли обратно в приют, и они поняли, что есть где-то жизнь. Где-то есть жизнь. Но нет, я знаю, что вы помогаете приютам, правильно я понимаю?
Okay, and here I wanted to pay your attention to this word приют. In this case, because we're talking about animals, it can be like a shelter for animals. Приют для животных. But it also can mean orphanage home. Like in this case, you would say детский приют or детский дом. But приют in general we use for such places.
Да.
Ир, спасибо вам за это. Вы добрый человек. Помогайте животным.
Okay, and here everything was clear. And now it's your turn to explain me something. If you were watching attentively, you probably noticed that everywhere in the subtitles, the word вы or вам, вами, different forms of this word, you, I wrote with a capital letter. So sometimes we write this word with a capital one and sometimes with a lowercase letter v. So my question is, when do we write it with a capital letter and when we write it with a lowercase one? Write your version, your guess in the comments, and for me it'll be really interesting to read what you think about this. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to my channel to watch more of my videos. And don't forget that I also teach on Preply. And if you want to take an individual lesson with me, feel free to book a lesson there with me. You will find the link under the video. Thank you very much.